Director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. He joins me now from Kyiv. Thank you for joining us. These Security Council meetings in Moscow do happen, but there's obviously a huge amount of attention on them today. How much concern is there in Ukraine about what might come out of it after these attacks?
Well, obviously, the Ukrainian president has appealed to all Ukrainians, saying that, more attacks are coming. Just like your colleague just noted, the Crimean Bridge had a lot of Putin's personal political capital invested in it. It was his greatest propaganda project. He launched it in 2018. So this was and it came a day after his 70th anniversary. So this was a huge blow, and Putin, his acolytes started demanding that a response be severe. Otherwise, we'll lose face. Otherwise, people will see weakness in us. So, I mean, this 47 rockets so far. Like half an hour ago, 3 rockets landed right behind my house. And the windows shook. I'm sitting here in my office, away from windows, but we're in for a very tough days or maybe weeks ahead of us.
Salma was talking about how unsettling this is for Kyiv, because it's been relatively stable there, hasn't it? And this image that we're looking at of a playground being bombed, just the messaging that comes out of it, away from all the casualties, is very powerful, isn't it? And it's very unsettling.
It's very unsettling. I mean, the Kremlin obviously is claiming that the bridge was itself a civilian object, so this would be fair game, even though the bridge was that was the artery which connected Russia with the Crimea, and all the military supplies traveled across that bridge to feed Russia's war against Ukraine. So obviously it's cannot be compared. The playground that you mentioned, my kids played there from itty bitty, all their lives. This is a very, very disturbing and emotional and personal situation, and the whole area where the craters are, it's a few minutes away from me. It was an intersection, the busiest time of day when people were going to work. And to my knowledge, there were no military installations, objects, buildings, or anything.
Salma, we've heard a lot about how the Russians are really on the back foot and they're running out of resources and morale is low, according to intelligence coming out from the West and from Ukraine. But this is also a very clear message that they still have strength.
They do still have strength, but I think it's an indication also of just how cornered President Putin feels at this time. I mean, just think of that list of pressures he has on him. Thousands of square miles of territory lost to a Ukrainian counterstrike offensive in recent weeks. Pressure at home after the call of a partial mobilization sent tens of thousands of Russians literally fleeing for the border, getting out of the country as fast as they can. Pressure from within, from his own allies, from his own strongmen, from people within his inner circle saying, how are we facing these battlefield losses on the ground? What are we going to do about them? And then, of course, this humiliating strike over the weekend on the bridge. That is a President Putin who is on the back foot. That is a President Putin who is in the corner. And analysts will tell you that is when you are supposed to be most scared of President Putin. And I'll bring this up, the threat of nuclear disaster, that is nowhere on the agenda. Western officials say Russia is not preparing for that. But remember, President Putin has threatened that time and time again. I will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons. How far will he take this? What does it look like to save face?
And Peter, when we look back at a lot of Putin's pronunciations throughout this whole process, he said he's not going to do one thing, and he does. How concerned should we be about these tactical nuclear weapons being activated at some point?
Well, this is the ironic situation. When he says something he will not do and he does it, he is in fact saying that he will use the nuclear weapons. So, I mean, the logic would be that he's, for now, considering them to be more useful to himself as ways to pressure, first of all, the Western countries, the Biden administration, from, pressure to quit its support to Ukraine. Ukrainian officials are arguing quite the opposite. Our main general, Mr. Zaluzhny, the commander of the troops, has appealed to the West to provide Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles, Army tactical missile systems that can strike deep into the territory of Russia. Because for now, even despite the mobilization and the fleeing of hundreds of thousands of Russians, ordinary Russians, are not feeling the brunt of the war the way Ukrainians are. And so our military brass, our officials are arguing that, for that to change, Russians need to feel what this war is all about. And for now, it's a very lopsided situation. And so the Ukrainians are arguing that that has to change.
Peter, Zalmayev, and also Salma, thank you both very much indeed for your perspectives. We'll keep an eye on all the further developments, more attacks happening really.